Okay, so have you ever noticed how sometimes, like, your partner will say something and it just kind of rubs you the wrong way? It's
Yeah.
like they're speaking in code or something, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Today, we're going deep into those seemingly harmless phrases, the kind of things people say that could actually be hinting at some trouble in paradise.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, specifically infidelity.
Okay.
So we're looking at how, like, language can be used to sort of disguise what's really going on in a relationship,
Hmm.
and why paying attention to those seemingly innocent phrases can be so revealing.
Right. Yeah.
We're working from this really fascinating piece about relationship dynamics.
Okay.
It goes way beyond the surface level advice you usually hear, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not here to turn you into a private investigator, but more to give you the tools to understand those subtle clues your partner might be dropping.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, it's super important to remember that context is key.
Oh, absolutely.
These phrases don't automatically mean your partner is cheating, but they can be indicators that something needs a closer look.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump right in. One phrase that might seem pretty harmless on the surface is, so-and-so understands what I'm going through very well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's great to have supportive friends, right?
Yeah.
But where's the line?
The red flag here is when this praise for someone else becomes a recurring theme, especially if it's, contrasted with you, the listener.
Yeah.
It goes beyond just casual comparison. It's more about creating a strong emotional connection with someone outside the relationship.
Yeah, it's like they're subtly creating this story where this other person gets them better than you do.
Right.
You know, it makes me think of that study about emotional bids. Like, if your partner's constantly seeking validation from someone else, it could mean their needs aren't being met within the relationship.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a shift in the emotional landscape of the relationship, and it's definitely a sign to pay attention to what else might be going on.
Okay, let's move on to a classic excuse. Don't worry, I'm just going out with some friends. I mean, everyone needs their own social life, right?
Of course.
We can't expect our partners to be glued to our sides 24/7.
Right.
But the key here is looking beyond the surface.
Yeah.
This phrase can become a problem when it's constantly used as a way to avoid accountability or being questioned. It's not about banning your partner from having friends, right?
No.
It's more about noticing those inconsistencies in their stories, or if they get weirdly secretive about their outings.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like, from a psychological perspective, they might be trying to create this sense of normalcy to avoid discomfort or questions.
Yeah.
But if you start noticing a pattern of those inconsistencies, or if there's a sense of evasiveness, that's when it might be time for a deeper conversation.
And the source even mentioned that, like, the frequency of this excuse is a big giveaway. If it's constantly being used, there's a good chance something's being hidden.
Yeah. The more someone feels the need to conceal their actions, the more likely it is that something's not quite right.
Okay, this next one's a bit tricky. I need more space for myself.
Okay.
I mean, we've all heard this before.
Right.
And on its own, it can be a perfectly healthy thing for a relationship, right?
Right.
But when does it become a red flag?
I think the key factor is how that space is being used.
Yeah.
Is it for genuine personal growth, or is it more like they're just disappearing without a trace?
Right.
If you're left in the dark about their activities or notice a sudden increase in this need for space, that's definitely something to pay attention to.
This is where communication is so important, right?
Oh, yeah.
Imagine your partner suddenly says they need space every weekend, but they're vague about their plans and don't include you in any of it. That's a pretty significant shift in the dynamic, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It raises questions about why they feel the need to distance themselves without being open and honest.
That really makes you think, huh? And the source even suggested asking yourself, has there been a change in how they interact with you overall? If they're pulling away emotionally while also needing physical space, that's a double red flag.
Yeah, for sure. It's all about connecting the dots and seeing the bigger picture. A sudden need for space coupled with emotional withdrawal could be a sign of something else going on.
All right, let's move on to a phrase I think we're all pretty familiar with, especially these days. I'm working late tonight.
Oh, yeah.
We've all had those deadlines and late nights at the office. But how do we know when it's a genuine reason versus a cover-up?
Yeah, you're right. I think it becomes a red flag when it's a constant excuse, potentially masking something else entirely,
Mm-hmm.
like secret meetings or, as we're discussing, infidelity.
It's about noticing patterns, right?
Exactly.
If your partner suddenly starts working late every night and they never did that before, and there's no clear explanation, that's something to pay attention to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the late hours themselves. It's also how they react when you ask about it.
Yeah.
Do they become defensive or evasive or try to shut down the conversation?
That defensiveness can be so telling. And this source emphasized watching for those unexpected changes in routine and paying close attention to their response when you asked about those late nights.
Right. It's about trusting your gut. If something feels off, don't just brush it aside.
Now, this next one is a bit of a step up.
Mm.
I think we need some time apart.
Okay.
Relationships have their ups and downs, and sometimes a break can be a healthy way to work through things, right?
Yeah.
But how do we know when it's being used for a different reason?
I think this phrase becomes concerning when it's used to create distance without actually addressing the underlying problems in the relationship.
Right.
It's like putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone.
It makes you wonder, are they really trying to work things out? Or are they testing the waters for something else?
Yeah. The source material suggested that this phrase could be a way to gauge your reaction to the idea of separating.
Mm.
It could also be a way to create space for an affair without actually confronting the issue head-on.
And the article even mentioned that a huge red flag is if this suggestion comes completely out of the blue,
Yeah.
with no prior conversations about needing space or a break.
If it feels like a sudden ultimatum, that's definitely a sign to pay attention to.
It's like they're trying to create a situation where they can do what they want without having to deal with the fallout.
Right. It's about shifting responsibility and avoiding accountability.
Okay, last but not least, let's unpack this phrase. It can be pretty emotionally charged. You deserve someone better than me. It almost sounds noble, right?
Yeah.
Self-sacrificing even.
Right.
But could there be a darker side to it?
I think oftentimes this phrase is a way of dodging responsibility. Instead of owning up to their mistakes or addressing the real issues in the relationship, they shift the blame onto themselves.
So instead of acknowledging their infidelity or whatever it might be, they make it seem like they're the problem, not the actual issues at hand.
Exactly. It's a way of manipulating the situation to make it seem like leaving is a favor to you.
This source pointed out that this is often an attempt to ease their own guilt, to make themselves feel less bad about what they've done.
Yeah, it's a form of emotional manipulation, and it's important to recognize it for what it is.
So to recap, we've decoded 6 seemingly innocent phrases that could be hinting at deeper problems, even infidelity, lurking beneath the surface of your relationship.
Right.
But remember, these phrases are just one piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. You have to consider them in the context of your partner's overall behavior and communication patterns.
Right. They're not foolproof indicators of cheating, but they are clues worth considering, especially if you see a pattern of these phrases combined with other changes in their actions.
And most importantly, trust your gut. If something feels off, don't just ignore it.
Right.
Communication is absolutely key in any healthy relationship, and these phrases can be a good starting point for a deeper conversation with your partner.
Yeah, it's about being proactive. Address your concerns rather than letting them just build up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This isn't about becoming hyper suspicious of every little thing your partner says.
Right.
It's more about understanding how we communicate and using that knowledge to, build stronger and healthier relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's empowering yourself to have those conversations and to, advocate for your own well-being.
This whole deep dive has been so eye-opening for me,
Yeah.
It's amazing how much we can learn just from looking closely at what people say.
Right.
But, words are just one part of communication.
What are some of the nonverbal cues we should be looking out for?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Nonverbal communication is super powerful. It often speaks louder than words.
Right.
So pay attention to things like eye contact.
Okay.
Are they avoiding your gaze or looking away when certain topics come up?
Uh-huh.
What about their body language?
Yeah.
Are they closed off and defensive or open and receptive?
Yeah, it's like a whole other language we need to learn.
Exactly. And don't underestimate your intuition.
Right.
If something feels off, there's usually a reason for it.
Yeah.
Your gut is often trying to tell you something important.
Oh, that reminds me of that study about microexpressions.
Oh, yeah.
Those fleeting facial expressions that reveal our true emotions, even if we try to hide them.
Yeah, even if someone's trying to control what they're saying, their body language can give them away. So Pay attention to those little inconsistencies, the things that don't quite match up.
Yeah, like putting the pieces of a puzzle together.
Right.
You might not see the whole picture right away, but as you gather more information, things start to become clearer.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to ask for clarification. If something your partner does raises a red flag, address it calmly and directly. Open communication is the foundation of any strong relationship.
Right. It's about creating a safe space where you can both be honest with each other, even if it's about something uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. Fostering transparency and honesty. If you can't talk openly with your partner, that's a red flag in itself.
So let's say we do notice some of these red flags in our own relationships.
Mm-hmm.
What can we do? We've talked about communication, but what are some practical steps we can take?
Well, first and foremost, remember, you're not alone. It's totally normal to experience these kinds of challenges.
Yeah.
If you're feeling overwhelmed or unsure,
Yeah.
reach out to someone you trust.
Right.
A friend, family member, or even a therapist.
Yeah. Having an outside perspective can be so valuable.
Absolutely. It helps you see things more objectively. Maybe notice patterns you hadn't seen before.
Okay, so what about talking to our partners?
Yeah, when you're ready to address the issue with your partner, choose a time and place where you can both talk openly.
Right.
No distractions, no pressure.
Set the stage for a conversation, not a confrontation.
Exactly. Approach the conversation with empathy. Try to see things from their perspective as well.
Yeah.
And use I statements.
Oh, right.
Express your feelings without blaming them. So instead of saying, you always do this, try, I feel this way when you do this.
Okay, that's a good tip.
Be prepared to really listen to their response as well. It's a two-way street. Both of you deserve to be heard.
Yeah, it's not about winning or losing. It's about finding a solution together.
Exactly. And if the conversation gets heated, take a break.
Yeah.
Come back to it when you're both calmer.
Sometimes stepping back is the best way to move forward.
Exactly. And remember, you can't control your partner. You can't force them to change.
Yeah.
The goal is to build a relationship based on trust, respect, and open communication.
It's about working as a team to get through those tough spots that come up in every relationship.
Yeah. And if you're having trouble finding common ground, or if your partner just won't engage in an honest conversation, it might be time to think about professional help.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you need that outside perspective to see things more clearly and to develop healthier ways of communicating.
Right.
Couples therapy can be really helpful.
Okay, so this deep dive has been so insightful. I'm sure our listeners are feeling empowered to, use what they've learned in their own relationships.
Got it.
Before we wrap things up, I'd love to get your final thoughts on creating healthier communication patterns, even if we haven't encountered any of these specific red flags.
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I think it starts with being mindful of our own communication style.
Yeah.
Are we really listening to our partners?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we just waiting for our turn to talk?
Oh, yeah, it's so easy to fall into that trap.
It is. And it's important to be aware of our own emotional triggers.
Okay.
Those things that set us off. If we can identify them, we can learn to manage them better and avoid unnecessary arguments.
It's like building emotional intelligence, right?
Exactly. And don't be afraid to say what you need clearly and directly.
Yeah.
Don't expect your partner to read your mind.
It's about standing up for yourself in a healthy way.
Right. And trying to create a culture of appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
Notice the good things your partner does and acknowledge them.
Those small gestures of appreciation can make such a difference.
They really can. And remember, communication is a journey.
Yeah.
It's not a one-time fix. It's a continuous process of understanding and connecting with your partner.
Right. It's about building a strong foundation of trust and respect.
Exactly. And remember, relationships are a journey, not a destination. There will be bumps along the way. But with open communication and the willingness to grow together, you can work through those challenges and build a relationship that's both fulfilling and lasting.
I love that. This deep dive has been so valuable, and I'm so grateful for your insights. I know our listeners are going to find this information super helpful. It really has been fascinating, hasn't it? We've gone really deep into these phrases.
We have.
But I think what I'm taking away from all of this is it's less about, memorizing a list of red flags.
Right.
It's more about just being aware of the bigger picture.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the overall patterns in our relationships.
It's not about becoming a relationship detective,
Right.
constantly analyzing your partner's every word and move.
Yeah, exactly.
It's more about cultivating that deeper awareness of how you both communicate and interact.
So instead of obsessing over every little phrase, we should be asking ourselves, has there been a shift in their communication style?
Right.
Are they suddenly more secretive or evasive? Is there a mismatch between what they're saying and how they're acting?
Yeah, those subtle shifts in the dynamic.
Yeah.
Because sometimes those seemingly innocent phrases are just the tip of the iceberg. It's a sign to step back and look at the bigger picture.
It makes me think back to something you said earlier about trusting our gut instincts.
Yeah.
Like if something feels off, it probably is.
Right.
But how do we balance that with, not jumping to conclusions?
It's about finding that balance between intuition and, being rational. If you hear these phrases and you feel uneasy, don't ignore that feeling, but don't automatically assume the worst. Use it as a chance to talk to your partner openly and honestly.
So instead of letting those doubts just eat away at us, we should address them directly.
Exactly.
But that can be so scary. How do we even start those conversations without sounding like we're accusing them of something?
You're right. It's all about how you approach it.
Yep.
So instead of saying, you always say you're working late, I think you're cheating, try something like, hey, I've noticed you've been working late a lot lately, and I'm feeling a bit disconnected. Can we talk about it?
So it's about focusing on our feelings and inviting a dialogue instead of just shutting down the conversation.
Exactly. It's
Yep.
about coming from a place of wanting to understand and connect rather than pointing fingers.
This has honestly given me so much to think about, Not
Yes.
just for my own relationship, but for my friends and family, too.
It's good to be aware of these things.
It's like you've given us a whole new way of looking at communication.
And even if you haven't personally come across these phrases or red flags, these insights can still be valuable.
Yeah.
They can help you tune into your partner's communication style and ultimately strengthen your relationship.
Because ultimately, communication is the foundation of any healthy, lasting relationship, right?
It is.
It's about being present,
Yes.
being attentive, and, being willing to have those tough conversations with honesty and compassion.
Well said. And you're not alone on this journey. We all face challenges in our relationships. But with the right tools and that commitment to open communication, we can build those stronger, more fulfilling connections with the people we care about.
This deep dive has been, eye-opening and insightful. I'd even say a bit of a wake-up call. I hope our listeners feel ready to, take what they've learned and apply it to their own lives. Because even those tiny, seemingly harmless phrases can tell us so much more than we think.
They really can.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the hidden language of relationships. Until next time, keep those conversations going and those connections strong.